From the Daily Catch, this is The Catch-Up, and I'm Walter Mullen. This episode of The Catch-Up is brought to you by Hudson Solar and Battery Solutions, your local experts in energy independence. In Red Hook, Rhinebeck, and across the Hudson Valley, Hudson Solar Solutions helps homeowners and small businesses become more resilient. The only way to truly lower your energy costs is to reduce what you use or generate your own power. Hudson Solar Solutions designs premium solar and battery systems built to do exactly that, safely and reliably. Visit hudsonsolarsolutions.com to see what energy independence looks like. In Red Hook, a set of school capital projects heading to voters this May has sparked a broader conversation about priorities, transparency, and community input. What began as a single proposal totaling $16.4 million, covering a bus garage expansion and upgrades to high school welding facilities, has now been split into separate propositions following public pushback. At the center of this debate is a nearly $15 million plan to renovate and expand the aging bus garage. Officials say the current facility is outdated and unsafe, while some nearby residents have raised concerns about potential impacts on property values, privacy, and quality of life, and the overall price tag for the renovation. A smaller proposal to upgrade welding facilities highlights a different question: how to expand access to career and technical education for students. As voters prepare to decide, the issue brings into focus not just what the school district is proposing, but how those decisions are made. We welcome reporter Claire Greenberg back to the show today to walk us through what's going on. It's the week of March 30th. Claire, it's always a pleasure having you back in the studio.
Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so we're talking Red Hook and we're talking about the school district. Let's start at the beginning, Claire. What exactly are Red Hook voters being asked to approve this May?
Yeah, so every May, voters in the Red Hook School District weigh in on a few things related to the school district. So that includes the district's operating budget, any open school board seats, and any proposed capital projects. And for any of our listeners who don't know what that is, capital projects are generally any major improvements or renovations that need to be made to district facilities, which would come at an added cost to taxpayers on top of the operating budget that their tax dollars already pay for, which is why they need to be voted on separately and they require a majority vote to pass. This year, as always, residents will vote on the district's operating budget on 2 open school board seats, which we'll have more details about in the coming weeks after candidates file their paperwork, so we'll know who's running, and then on 3 separate capital projects. So I thought it would be helpful to walk listeners through what their ballot will look like and what exactly they'll be voting for this year. So on the ballot this year in May, voters will see a series of propositions that they will get to vote yes or no on. So Proposition 1 will be for the operating budget. Proposition 2 will ask residents to approve $1.1 million for upgrades to the high school's welding facility, which will support the infrastructure needed to launch a new welding career and education pathway at the school. And administrators estimate that that will cost about $2 per year over 21 years for a taxpayer who owns a home that's worth about $400,000. Then moving on to Proposition 3, Prop 3 will fund the renovation and expansion of the district's bus garage, which has a projected cost of about $14.7 million. And that will come at a slightly higher cost to taxpayers. It'll be about $26 per year over 21 years for someone who owns a home worth $400,000. So then moving on to Proposition 4, Prop 4, if approved, will allow the district to purchase 6 vehicles, 3 hybrid SUVs, 2 gas-powered buses, and a maintenance plow truck. And the total cost for that one will be about $530,000. And the district hasn't yet been able to estimate exactly how much Prop 4 will cost taxpayers, but you can imagine that it would be quite low relative to the other 2 because it's much less expensive. And then there will also be 2 additional propositions on the ballot, Prop 5 and 6, which both relate to the local public library budgets. Those will appear on the ballot alongside the school items, but they will not actually be part of the school district's budget or operation. So those are separate from the district.
Great. That's really helpful, Claire. So we have six propositions. That's great that you laid them out. But let's just circle back a little bit because Proposition 2, which is for the welding facility, and Proposition 3 for the bus garage renovation, they were initially in the same proposition. And that's sort of the interesting part of this story. Talk to us about what happened. How did they move from a single proposition into two separate propositions?
Yeah, so until last Friday, two of the capital projects, the welding facility upgrade and the bus garage expansion, were combined into a single $15.9 million proposal. About 2 weeks ago, the school board voted to move forward with that bundled version, and it was set. But then at a special meeting last Friday, the board reversed course and voted to split it into two separate propositions. And board members said that decision came in response to community feedback. After the initial vote, they said residents began reaching out to say they prefer to consider the projects individually rather than as a package. And board members said they heard that loud and clear, and then they called the special meeting to revisit and ultimately change the decision.
Is it unusual for the school district to make this change so quickly?
It's not unusual for them to make it quickly because they have to have all of the ballot language set in stone by early April. So that's not unusual, but the fact that they would make the decision or revert course at all is fairly unusual.
So let's just turn the clock back a little bit. There's a clear parallel here to something that happened in 2024 when Red Hook voters rejected another bundled proposal that was unbundled and they approved part of it. Can you remind listeners what happened in 2024 and how that might be relevant to what's happening today?
Yeah, in 2024, voters were asked to approve a bundled capital project that included both a gym renovation and funding for a new turf field at the school. And the turf field, for a number of reasons, was very controversial in the community. I'm sure many of our listeners will remember what happened. And that proposal was ultimately rejected. But then a few months later, the district brought the projects back separately, and the gym renovation passed on its own, but the turf field was yet again shot down. So it's a pretty clear example of how bundling can affect the outcome of a vote, and I think what district leaders wanted to avoid this time around.
So a district would bundle for simplicity, apparently, but they also might bundle because they think that one part of the proposition might be very favorable and it might bring the other one along with it. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's jump in and just talk a bit more about the bus garage. The district makes a very strong case that the current bus garage is outdated and even unsafe. How compelling is that argument?
I think there are mixed feelings in the community about the bus garage project. District leaders argue it's necessary because the existing facility is inadequate, somewhat dilapidated, and in some cases unsafe. They say the existing facility is super cramped. Offices and work areas are very tight. There's really little space for staff to move around, and the break room where bus drivers spend their breaks and their lunches is far too small to house all the bus drivers at once. And there are also some safety concerns, like the garage floor is uneven and made of dirt in some areas, which has created some tripping hazards, and some of the equipment is outdated and no longer functional, and the garage doors are deteriorating. So they think that this is very necessary. And what the proposed project would actually do, it would fund a major expansion of the facility, which would include new bus bays, a larger break room for drivers, dedicated training space, and private office space for transportation staff. And they would also renovate the existing building, so they wouldn't get rid of that. They would renovate it. And yeah, district leaders think that this would really significantly improve working conditions. And from their perspective, this isn't just expansion for expansion's sake. It's really about bringing the facility up to a safe and functional standard.
So clearly the facility is outdated and something needs to be done, but let's talk about the cost. $14.8 million to renovate the garage, renovate and expand. Many people in the community have reacted to that price. What do we know about the cost and other possible less expensive options?
Yeah, the cost has definitely raised concerns for some residents. One question that's come up is why the district is choosing to renovate and expand the existing garage rather than demolishing it and building a new one, potentially in a different location, which some residents have speculated could even be cheaper and also allow the district to relocate the building in a more convenient location because right now it's quite proximate to some homes where people live. So it's possible another location might be more desirable. But district officials have said in response to that they have considered pursuing demolition, but have decided not to go that route because that type of project would not be eligible for state aid. Whereas part of the renovation plan, what's currently being proposed, are eligible for state reimbursement. So that would help offset the costs for taxpayers. So basically, demolishing and rebuilding would just be too expensive.
Okay, makes sense. So the district says design plans aren't final and there's still time for public to give input. How much influence can residents realistically have at this point?
Yeah, so actually at the last board meeting, one resident who lives in a house with her family that's located directly behind the bus garage came to the meeting to raise concerns about how close the proposed expansion would be to her home. So right now she lives right behind the building, but the way the expansion is proposed, the expanded facility would be even closer to her house. She said it would be about 10 yards from one corner of her home. So she's worried it could affect her property value, and also she's worried about air pollution and noise that could come from the building's construction. She's also concerned that the windows from the garage that are built could look directly into windows in her home. So they would look into bedrooms and bathrooms. And she really wants the board to consider alternatives to what's being proposed. So either scaling back the project footprint or potentially relocating the facility to another location. And what the district has said is that the designs that she's looking at are still preliminary plans. Detailed designs wouldn't be finalized until after the May vote. So, even if a project is approved in May, the district isn't bound to these preliminary plans. There would still be time to redraw them, and no matter what, the project would still go through several more months of review by village and state officials.
And just a real quick aside here, because I know the whole issue of electric vehicles and electric school buses is something that has to be considered. Would the new garage have some kind of capacity for charging new electric vehicles?
Yeah, they're not planning to install chargers, but they will have the electrical upgrades necessary to support chargers in the future if they do end up buying more electric buses.
Okay, good. Let's move on to the welding program. This is a simpler part of the proposition. It's not as expensive or as big as the bus garage part, obviously. So the welding program is inexpensive, as we said, about $2 a year for taxpayers. And the district says it's going to expand access to career training. Talk to us a bit about that. What are they going to be adding to their curriculum to help students by doing this?
Yeah, so the welding portion of Prop 2 is relatively low cost, and it could have a meaningful impact. The funding would go toward building out the facilities needed for a new in-house career and technical education pathway at the high school. So it would include installing professional grade welding booths along with the ventilation and electrical systems required to run them. Right now, how it works at Red Hook High School is that students who want to pursue welding have to go through Duchess BOCES, which is in Poughkeepsie. And the seats at that program are limited. So for the students who do get in, they have to commute there, and that commute's fairly long. It adds up to an hour, and that can cut into their ability to take other classes or participate in extracurriculars throughout the school day. So the idea here is that by bringing the program in-house, it would be more accessible to a larger number of students and also help the students who are already participating stay in the school and be more integrated with school programs throughout the day.
Good. Okay, so in the first story, we saw tension around transportation decisions, purchasing gas-powered buses just before a state mandate for the electric fleets. How does this factor into the overall conversation about long-term planning and fiscal responsibility for the school district? Do you have any observations on that?
Yeah, so just for a little bit of background on what mandates the school is facing. So New York State is requiring all school bus fleets to be fully electric by 2035. And starting in 2027, districts won't be allowed to purchase new gas-powered buses at all. So this is essentially the last window for Red Hook to buy any gas-powered buses if they want to. And the district still has a long way to go in transitioning its fleet. There are currently more than 20 gas buses that would eventually need to be replaced by electric buses. But to their credit, they have already started the process of transitioning. And unlike many school districts across the state, I'll note, because many school districts haven't purchased any electric buses at all, and they're facing the same mandate as Red Hook. But Red Hook has purchased 6 electric buses so far. They purchased 4 last year and 2 the year before. And they managed to get those buses at a steep discount. So the market cost for an electric school bus is about $450,000. So they're very expensive. But Red Hook managed to get each of those buses for around $13,000. And that was thanks to state aid and a large grant that they got from NYSERDA. But this year, district leaders say that that level of funding just isn't available. Electric buses are 2 to 3 times more expensive than gas buses, and they're not seeing the same ability to offset costs this year, which just makes buying electric buses much more expensive for taxpayers right now than it has been in the past. So instead, they're proposing to purchase gas-powered buses in this cycle. And that's raised some concern among residents, particularly around environmental goals and whether this delays progress toward meeting the state mandate. And the district's response to that has largely been, this is a financial and practical decision. They don't think it makes economic sense to ask taxpayers to absorb the full cost of electric buses without state support.
Claire, did you ever think you'd become an expert in school buses and school bus garages?
Definitely not.
Great. So final question, when voters go to the polls in May, what are the key questions they should be asking themselves before they decide?
Ultimately, it comes down to what priorities residents want to support for the district moving forward. Do they see value in expanding trades education at the school? Do they want to improve working conditions at the bus garage? Does the district's argument around purchasing gas-powered buses make sense to them? And then, of course, what are they willing to and feel able to pay for right now?
Exactly. Great. Well, listen, good reporting, and we'll continue to follow the story. And just to remind listeners, this is going to go to a vote in May, right?
Yeah, May 21st.
Great. Claire, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Walter.
And as we wrap up, a big thank you to our sponsor, Hudson Solar and Battery Solutions. If you've been thinking about solar, especially after the last big power outage, now's a good time to explore it. Visit hudsonsolarsolutions.com for more information. That concludes this episode of The Catch-Up. Thanks to Maddie Rosenberg, Jen Hammoud, and Esther Martell, our partners at Radio Free Rhinecliff, for their help in producing this episode. We'll see you next time.